no,
Perfect.
never.
Come on, Jordan, get to
What
it.
all? And welcome back to another thrilling episode of Off the Dome. I'm your humble interviewer, Jordan Brown. With me for the very first time is our wildly brilliant narrators of Worlds Beyond Number. Say hi, wildly brilliant narrators of Worlds Beyond Number.
Hi, wildly narrators of Worlds Beyond Number.
Yay!
That's going to sink up
fun.
crisp
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
fresh dollar bill.
It always does. Grip it and rip it. Thank you. That's always how you want it. Start with a bunch of people on different things. Taylor, have we lost your audio instantly?
No, I was I was doing a little bit quietly to myself. I
great.
apologize to everyone in the world.
All right. Here we go.
This energy is bad.
I apologize to you. That
The
is
fact
the
that
feeling.
there is energy is good to me. That is good enough.
Mhm.
Look at us go.
Yes.
Hooray.
So, heart. At the core of this podcast lies a deep caring, love, and attention to detail that creates the beautiful beating world of Umora.
Aww.
And that's it. That's the only question I had. I just wanted to finish off the Captain Planet. Now we're done. Thank you guys so
You
much.
did it.
Can
You
I
made
know
it.
it's rude. I know it's rude to answer a question with a question. Can I respond to your question by saying I didn't feel the hook of a question mark. It felt like a statement.
It was, yeah.
Oh, good, great, good.
Yeah.
I get it. Great, we're
Look,
locked in.
No one's ever said I'm good at this.
What Brennan said was also not a question.
Yeah.
God. I can't work under these conditions. I'm
So
gonna
Worlds
freeze.
Beyond Number is real good. Before we hop into deep into things, I just want to say there's never been the most enjoyment I have ever received out of listening to a podcast, bar none, is A County Affair, and I think we should all just heap praise upon Erika for truly making magic. And I'm so excited for the next one shot.
Yeah.
I gotcha. You didn't see that one coming, did you?
Gorgeous.
Oh, that was sneaky.
Sorry, Dan, you're absolutely right.
That
Erika
was it was a
crushed it.
joy. It was an absolute joy and a privilege, and I was very nervous, but it really is hard to stay rattled when you have just a whole team of absolute shooters just backing up your every word and taking you into directions that you could have never dreamed of yourself and are just perfect. Thank you. Yeah. And this new the new one shot is it's funny because I sometimes, especially GMing, kind of black out and I know all the machinery is running and that somebody is manning the stage while I'm gone, but I don't know. So I think everybody had fun and that was my goal. But yeah, I'm already thinking about ooh, what would I do differently next time? And yeah, that was a joy. It's a joy because they make unexpected choices and they really explore the world in exciting ways, and they absolutely will take anything that I put down for them and yank it out of my hands and go running. So I have to chase them, and it leads to some just beautiful moments.
I can't wait.
Yeah. I love hearing that you got that GM Parvo in you now, and you're like, what would I run next?
Yeah,
That's good.
Yes.
It's gonna be. It's good. Everything's good.
Yeah, Erika's got Parvo is the takeaway.
Yeah.
It's
Incredible.
Aabria telediagnosing, which you're not supposed to do.
Yeah. Hey, there you go.
I'm a doctor.
I thought that was amazing, and Erika too. I feel like that initial A County Affair, you were amazing, and it was very. I know that the nerves were genuine, but there was no way to fail. It was so fun. The mission was so great, and it's very fun to be on the other side of the fence where you're it's supposed to be a one shot and it's really over the top and it's barnyard animals on a heist, and it just felt for a place that you roll with shoes is such a funny system. I don't know, you knocked it out of the park. It was great.
100%.
It was always gonna be. You're the best.
Erika, we can't hear you anymore. Oh no. That seems bad. that we can't. I feel like we should be able to hear Erika, right? Like that's a thing that should happen.
Probably.
Yeah.
Let's compliment Erika until their sound is back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those where like I remember having conversations before we got started and before Erika locked themselves in the bathroom to stress for a good hour before. But it has to be one of those things where you're like, we've played together for so long that you know that there's a sequence that everyone just sort of drops into. And as much as you can like tell someone about it, it's different once you feel it. Like I get nervous every time I GM for these people because they're the best of the best. And you always want to like give your best to your friends and like make something that's fun for them first before you even think about like the audience facing like aspects of it all. And I'm just really happy that Erika got to feel the vibes that I always compliment them on, which is just like, oh, you just have absolute killers in your corner. I made them leave.
Yep.
And now I feel bad.
They're out of no more compliments for Erika.
No more compliments.
My wonderful wife Isabella Rowland is quick to point out that I actually, if you've heard of her, she points out that I'm constantly surprised when at the beginning of every recording camp, every batch recording of the podcast, and every season of Dimension 20, every time I always go, I'm unprepared. I'm like, I just need a few more days. I need a little bit more time. I need a da-da-da-da-da. And she's pointed out that regardless of whether in any given instance that's true or untrue, it is something that I say every time.
Yeah.
And then come back to, like, it's like, well, it can't be true every time. And but that feeling of wanting to bring your best for people is very, very true here. Although I think a lot of the joy of Umora is that kind of the fun that is like coming from someone who used to run multi-year campaigns in all of my home games. The longer you're in a world, it marinates. Like the world gets richer. Yeah. It's easier to improvise because you're already in a world that you've painted with so much detail and love and affection that it's like, oh, if I have to improvise here, it's not whole cloth. We actually, you're going back to that place? Well, shit, let me pull up my notes about that place. Like that's a lovely part of doing something in this format.
100%.
Beautiful. Erika, are you back?
I'm back, I think.
You are. We can hear you. Wonderful. I love that.
I couldn't take it anymore. I just let it go. But yeah. Oh, also, I think here's a little tidbit is I think we can say when I DM the children's adventure one shot, it's just for Aabria and Lou.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Very fun.
Yes.
I talked to Taylor last week. Taylor, I believe you described, I don't know which part was, something has, as opposed to 12 Brooks, something at least in this next arc has more, and I believe the direct quote was wet slapping sounds.
That was not this one.
What?
So we have two...
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Oh, God.
There's two interludes coming up. There's two one-shots. Both are spooky in different ways. And that's all I'll say about that.
Help. What don't I remember has
you to picture
slapping sounds?
I want you to picture Taylor in a hazmat suit. He has two cat o' nine tails absolutely covered in filleted chicken breasts. As he walks into the room, that's the wet slapping noise that you're going to be hearing, presumably throughout both of these one-shots ad infinitum.
Now, is he using the cat of nine tails on the chicken breast, or is the cat of nine tails made of chicken breast?
It's
or
chicken breast,
hazmat suit.
Porque no los dos.
Okay.
Hey, no los dos.
Porque chicken doesn't hold up to whipping.
I know it's disgusting in here, and it stinks.
That's porque.
It stinks so bad. I did not clean.
Well,
I'm going to be hot for this.
This feels like a perfect time to head to the Horner Corner.
Does it?
Yeah.
We should go to the Horner Corner while I can visibly see salmonella on the wall behind,
falling off my ceiling.
Fuck, marry, kill.
Yes.
Will Gallows, the Man in Black, Grimoire.
Okay, kill Grimoire, fuck the Man in Black, marry Will Gallows. Wow. I wish I had hesitated at all longer, but I was entirely correct.
Now, do we think that Will Gallows is already, in fact, dead? Like, and so is... we can't really answer this. I mean, I guess no, it's... Yeah.
I'm going to put it on him and bring him back. I'm sorry, the man said he doesn't have any more rope, and I can bring that. Wow. Ame made a lot of new kudzu rope, and it sounds like we could get that. I don't know. Someone else answer this question.
Yeah. That is really a toughie.
It's not.
I'm gonna go.
I got it.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go kill Will Gallows because I think it's proven that he can survive it. I think that
good call.
I think that we're gonna go marry the Man in Black because he's got. I mean, being the spouse of the Man in Black has got to come with some pretty. He's got stones and swords, and people have sworn to him. Probably going to live in a nice house. And he's never home. He's always walking on the road. Yeah. He's out of town all the time.
12 different patrons.
I'm saying I want to be a kept husband by the Man in Black.
But do you want Marara to be sort of your, like, she's like the side piece.
She can watch
that he's going to.
Marara can be the other woman. I'm the one who's on the paperwork. Okay, I'm taking care of the kids. Okay, I'm the one he's taking to the high society parties. Okay, all right. He can go do what he needs to do with Marara, but I'm going to be in the Cadillac on the ride home. You understand? Okay. All right.
There's no Cadillac. He just walks. You have to walk everywhere with the Man in Black.
He can carry me in his big, strong arms.
Is that canon now? Man in Black, big, strong arms?
Big, strong arms.
I have held my breath since the dawn of time, and this is my husband, Brennan.
Aabria, he has held his breath since the dawn of time.
Ooh.
I'm going to test that. I also want to test that.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was definitely going to say marry Man in Black because for all the reasons that Brennan listed.
I don't know.
But also I feel like a compelling case could be made for marrying Grimoire because the idea of running around in the wild with my wife, like, forever sounds really great. But then it's like, would the running rule apply to me? No, because we'd be on the hunt together, right?
So that's what you want to think, but there was no stipulation. You have to make sure you're faster than your wife. That's the rule. You have to be faster than her.
I can do that.
Also, she's stinky. We keep forgetting that.
No, we don't.
Brennan, no. I've lost faith in my friends in this moment. Jordan, what have you done to us?
Hey,
Nemesis.
All we got to do, I mean, there's ways you can mitigate, like you can mitigate. Maybe
she's
it's
unfabrizable.
Mitigate that scent, yes.
It's unfabrizable.
Maybe she's just waiting. She's just waiting for a spouse to like take a dip in like a spring glen, and then you're good to go.
This is why Brennan was correct. I think she is the single one-time fuck.
Because it just seems too exciting.
You want to go whole hog with her, but all the time, like I don't like. I'm thinking about the whole time completely sexually. I feel like Will Gallows, I've read the AO3 story back to front a couple times. I've put it out and sent it to friends in prison. I feel like I've had that snack, and so he can die. And like Brennan said, it's very kind. He's already dead. Grimoire, give me that one time. Give me one unforgettable night. I feel like her sexual range is extremely limited.
Chump, and I think we can say that.
Yeah, she really only knows how to do it one way. You never see animals like do different stuff.
Yeah,
animals do it one way so
aren't
much.
Strong on the switch up.
No, they're not. We even call it doggy style because that is the style that dogs do it in.
Okay.
Just right? David Attenborough looking at two dogs with feathers and oil.
They're getting out the triangle pillow.
So
surprise, a good Attenborough. Oh, wow.
If Grimoire has a wedge pillow, I change my answer.
Oh boy, let's see Screen Rant ask you these kind of questions in like 4
Okay,
hours.
okay, so that's the thing, is that like the Wild Hunt, and the closer you get to the spirit, the more they're just like always down to clown, right? Brennan, correct?
Yes, I think that the I think absolutely.
You tapped with Brennan in for fuck lore.
Yes.
Yes, it's true. You know how we were like, well, there's a lot of horny energy happening here, and it's because, you know, as a spirit, you're just like, yeah, I'm close to killing or fucking or eating or drinking, like at all times and stuff. And so I feel like Grimoire could have that energy. Like, you know, she's so strongly a part of the Wild Hunt, and she hangs with so many spirits that's, I think, what would get me. And I can't decide.
Hear you.
Like,
we're really not giving it up for human ingenuity. And I just want to call that back. Like, I understand, Erika, you have to be the bridge between like horniness for the spirit and for humanity. But I really think like a wedge pillow is invented by maybe the Antivalists. So we really got to give it up for humanity.
That's a guitar pillow for sure.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of Antivalists being like, after our most recent expedition, we've discovered that the clitoris actually extends deeper than anyone could have imagined. Accessible from points of egress and ingress. My schematics, behold! Imagine, if you will, an isosceles. Imagine, if you will, an isosceles triangle constructed of foam.
Okay, and I feel like the Icadator would go onto that, and then like I kind of be like, "Ooh, look at this! Really interesting information," and form little groups of it and stuff, secret societies where they discuss it, and you know,
Amazing.
Anyway, I love your world building, Brennan. It's important to me.
It's beautiful.
Yep.
I have a Discord where there are 3 topics of discussion, mainly Dropout, NADPOD, and Worlds Beyond Number. And one of the things that I like to encourage people to do is to, like, especially if they're listening for the first time, is to post like, hey, here's where I'm at, blah, 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 because they get to like experience it again for the first time, and it's beautiful and wonderful. Anyway, I would like to read you a message, back-to-back messages from someone.
Yes.
Children's Adventure episode 3, because mark for spoilers.
Yes.
Ursula and eating the honey is just so silly and sweet. I love these kids so much. They're so cute. 2 hours later, I'm going to send a very strongly worded email to Mr. Lee Mulligan.
Yes!
Brennan, and for everyone, why are you the way that you are? And for everyone that has to play with them, what's it like having to deal with that?
I don't know. I'm playing so I can find out what it is.
Some men will really build an entire multi-year campaign instead of going to therapy. And we love that for them.
Yeah.
We love that.
I didn't say that. And there's something he's got to get out, some demon that he's got to exorcise, I think. I think that's Brennan. I think for Aabria, it's because of her delight in the torment.
Yeah.
Me, I just commit to a bit, I think, is what it is for me.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, yes, and.
What's wrong with you, Taylor? Why are you like this?
I desire control over the inner lives of others.
Oh. That's
good. In a way that terrifies me.
Here's the thing. That's actually all of our answer and every artist's answer, and it's fucked up. And this is why I think the first person who gets out on a national platform of banning artists and sending them to the moon, I think they're going to take away, and they're going to say, why are you going to these theaters and listening to these podcasts and absorbing this music that's choosing to make you feel bad? And everyone's going to wake up and go, boo, catharsis, and that'll be the end of it.
Yeah, it's true. I'm a professional emotional manipulator. I'm proud of it.
But I think that there's to answer the question genuinely, I think that the distance between emotional realities of people is at its most frightening when it feels impossible to surpass. When you go, hey, no matter how much I can see that all of my humans are like me and participating in society, I'm trapped in this brain that just feels my own thoughts and feelings. And maybe I'm totally, totally alone because I've only ever felt my own toothache. I've only ever understood my own perspective. I'm trapped, right? And I think that that things like storytelling and art and music and all these forms of media, like literally media, it's like in the middle. It's the connecting thing. And if you can go, I think this is sad. I think this is human. I think this is what makes us feel sad. And you do it and other people feel sad. It's not like experiencing that self-same thing in your own life where it's totally uncut. It has the emotion, but it's the catharsis of going, oh my God, we all actually are touching a finger. This sea between us is momentarily overcome. And I think that's
Brennan,
that's the goal.
How dare you take my bit and turn it into a real answer?
Do you want to talk more about fucking Will Gallows?
Yeah, Jordan, you want to know what it's like to play games with Brennan? That's it. That's it.
You're
like, here's a bit. And he's like, here's profundity. And you're like, well, shit. Okay. Next bit.
Yeah. You know what I knew when we were in trouble with the Citadel? Kith and kin, and not the reason you think. Like, the spirits in paintings, I was like, no, that makes sense. There are probably some bad ones. It was when, and I'm going to loosely paraphrase this here, when the Citadel was like, magic must be held in the hands of the few and cannot be redistributed to the hands of the many or it will lose value. And I was like, uh-oh, that's a capitalism, baby.
Well, no, wait a minute.
When you're at the table with Brennan, are you just listening for a capitalism to be like, the bad guy, I got it, the bad guy?
I want to be so clear. The Citadel has done nothing wrong and I will go to the mat for them.
Yeah, you want everyone to have a nuclear weapon, Jordan? That's a weird
Jordan.
policy.
Wow, Jordan
Yeah, if
Brown
everybody's
comes out
special, then nobody is.
Yeah.
Wants everyone to have nukes.
Yeah.
The only way to stop a bad guy with a nuke is a good guy with a nuke. It just makes sense, and I've said it all along.
It's so funny.
We've met some real yahoos. I don't think Professor Adelaide should be allowed to fireball people, and I don't think that's a crazy thing to say.
J.B. Adelaide, you'll never make fun of me again.
The broad that sings about pigeons, you want her to have wish? Is that what you want, Jordan? She couldn't name
20th level.
She couldn't name a third bird.
So long.
She couldn't name a third bird.
Oh, that song
also
was
nothing
so
funnier
good.
than being like, name another bird, Brennan, and watching Brennan turn off the part of his brain that knows all birds. And then
he
just
was
sing.
already locked in. When he is a specific character, he has a lexicon and like with little cards and a Rolodex, and that one had no bird cards.
No bird cards.
No bird cards.
Agnes had no bird cards.
Justice for Agnes.
Justice for Agnes. No, I think that there's so what's fascinating about that is the in that episode specifically, there are a lot of things too, and I would say weirdly, and listen, I'll always do hey, like the brand is strong, right? Like people, I won't knock that. But I will say that fans of the podcast, fans of Worlds Beyond Number, there are so many things to criticize about capitalism, and there are also other things that are worthy of criticism that go part and parcel with these other systems, right? It's a braid of systems that are helping each other. And weirdly, that episode, and really about Stone, Suvi's mother, and her relationship to the axiom of proliferation, is weirdly, it's a little bit of capitalism, but it's more about the expediency of politics touching things that should remain pure. The idea of Stone's complaint was, you're saying this is a rule of magic, and it's not a rule of magic. It's something that you don't trust people to take seriously unless you lie about what it is.
Yeah.
Now, we can get into why you want there to be less copies of magical spells. Maybe that is a totally capitalistic, control-based, false scarcity mentality. But that's a separate problem. There's another problem, which is you're lying about the truth of this very special, very new thing to achieve an end, and it's very short-sighted. So I would say there is a half of that is, like you're saying, the kind of system of control, but the other half is like almost a very Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park point. It's like, this is fucking with our methodology, and this should be our highest ideal, is to do this well. And if you're willing to fucking cut the legs out from under this for something like this, we're, what are we doing, right?
What are we doing here?
I think that's my favorite thing in the talking about like the distance between yourself and your character, like hearing those signals and like immediately pinging in my own like Aabria heart, like, oh yeah, great. Now we're getting to like the real thick of it. And then having to go back into, I won't call it like my justification machine, but the lens through which I have to process Suvi's reaction.
Suvi has done nothing wrong.
Oh no, Suvi does. Yeah.
Great.
She's never done anything wrong and her choices are completely good and valid. But there is something inside the like, how does Suvi respond to hearing that and feeling the distance between Stone's perspective on magic and Suvi, who was raised far more in the crucible of war than it sounds like her mother or like her parents ever were, without knowing too much about like the nature and like timeline of the war. You're like, oh, Suvi can hear that and like take something completely different away from it because she doesn't see it at like a thing that has simply been true for her whole life takes more to like bump on like all the things that she was like indoctrinated and raised to believe. So it's really fun sitting there going like, well, that makes perfect sense. How do I negate it? How do you like honor the idea that Suvi has been inside the Citadel her entire life and can hear something about the truth of magic and go, that's not more important than like the effort that you were raised to like face down in a war, in opposing magicians, like all of that like good stuff. So it was really fun.
This is also super established by Kalaya, by Ursulan's sister, in talking about how the Citadel has changed.
Yeah, right? It's interesting because the Citadel, at its heart and at its sort of inception, I always took as, like it's a learning institution, and it's an institution that is established to collate and pass on knowledge. And, but like any institution, if there are rules in there that are implemented, it leads to different things along the way. And that was really interesting to hear Kalaya be like, yeah, I just showed up and I could do magic. And they're like, cool, that's different and interesting and new and stuff. And then it was codified into, well, but that's not the right way to do magic and stuff. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah. That was for me a very interesting distinction.
Or even like, I think that's just a fun part. I love world building in fantasy worlds that acknowledges how rapidly things change. Like how many years is a generation? Like it's a very short periods of time and the whole world can be different. Like if military parades through Malacanth Court are 30 years old or 50 years old, it means that it's Suvi's entire world and the oldest Archmagi there remember when that wasn't how things were, right? I remember talking in real life to my grandma, who sadly passed away a few years ago, but lived a very, very long life. And I remember the first time I was talking to her, you're a kid and you're like, oh, you're going to make me talk to my grandma. And then I remember the first time in my early 20s that I was talking to my grandma and she was like, how are things going, Brennan? And I was like, oh, they're okay. And she just offhand was like,
where was your grandma from?
Yeah, she's from the South. Okay. My grandma, Dorothy Surratt, Dorothy née Waters, was like Southern Lucille Bluth. She was like, she was literally, it was crazy.
I knew you had the spark of that sorghum in you. I knew, I think, the South has never done anything wrong except let you go. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm thinking of some other stuff now.
Probably.
Yeah, I take that back.
Probably just the one, though.
Okay. Yeah. Truly, Taylor, I need to tell you this for real. Yep. One time, I was my grandmother. She went to the country club in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm there in my khakis with her, and she walks by, and this woman with this enormous like Sunday hat comes out, huge, vibrant, loud hat, and my grandma looks and says like, Donnie, I love your hat. And we got a step and a half past that woman, and she turned to me and said, I hate that hat.
Yes.
I was like, in my head as a Yankee, I was like, why bring up the hat? You didn't have to. We could have said
This makes perfect sense to me.
No, she's stunting on her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the DNA where the like conclave came from. Dorothy was in your blood and in your heart when you had to play 5 awful women yelling at 4 awful women yelling at each other. It was perfect.
She had an amazing.
We all heard it. We heard it.
Yeah, we heard you call Ame an awful woman.
Brennan doesn't play Ame.
The witches are great.
The wild part of that too, really, I do love that energy, and I love that. But the reason I was bringing up my grandma was just that first conversation you have where you're like, "Hey, grandma, how's it going?" She's like, "Oh, the birthday's coming up. That's exciting." And just offhand was like, "I'm worried about this fella. I haven't heard talk like this since right before World War II." And suddenly you're like, and she started talking about her like talking to my grandfather, who was an early fan of sci-fi films, and talked about how they used to show monster movies in a different theater than the real Hollywood movies. And she said something about on her first dates with my grandfather being like, after seeing like 8 different rubber monster movies, being like, "Frank, these movies are awful." And him being like, "Dottie, I know, but if we keep going, they'll get better." And and then my mom became a science fiction writer, and it was like it's like a very beautiful,
amazing.
And in any case, the idea of writing your fantasy worlds that have the same level of things that remain constant and things that really change and rapidly, and a lot of that idea of wizardry being a stand-in for something that has really rocked the world of Umora, changed it rapidly. Even though the Citadel is this like ancient institution, it's like about to celebrate its bicentennial. It's like 200 years old, right? Like, it's rapid. That's a rapid change in the world.
I really do. I want to just, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Brennan. Go ahead and finish your wonderful thought.
No, that's it.
I just wanted to compliment that your world building is insane and wonderful, and it feels so different from all of the fantasy that I've ever engaged with because of that change. There isn't that sense of like, here's a static world that stretches on like the same endlessly in both directions in time. Like, it feels like the world is constantly happening around and to the characters. And I think there's something inside of that that just makes Umora truly my favorite. Like, yeah, of course it's my favorite fantasy world that's ever existed, but like, it's brilliant. And it just feels so alive in a way that, like, as we talk about like the joy and the things that come from being able to like live in a world for a longer amount of time, it's every time we go back to camp, it feels more like sliding on well broken in shoes. Like, it just becomes easier and comfortable, and it makes sense, and it's just so good. Yeah.
I will say one of the things that like I felt the end of that sentence coming. I was going to jump in to save you.
Good. Thank you.
I would say one of the things that makes, I think, Umora really special is Erika and your like pull in of a non-Western fantasy trope that like I think really expands the world such a beautiful way, and like really as someone also just like the biggest Tolkien nerd, of course, so like my fantasy is very one note, like I really love Ame and everything that came out of like her and like what she brings to the world, as well as obviously then getting the WitchCon, because it was the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life.
WitchCon was so stressful.
Yeah. This 14 episodes is 48 hours long. That's fucking wild.
I love it.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think Umora and our specific story is where a lot of Brennan's and Aabria's and my sort of story influences converge. Like, I think that I grew up with a lot of world myths and a lot of different like disparate cultures, and I read Tolkien at an early age. I love classic fantasy, but also I think the Studio Ghibli of it all is an interesting intersection, because Studio Ghibli is itself very cross-cultural. has like Howl's Moving Castle, which we point to a lot in terms of the tone and sort of setting of the world, is itself a European novel. And, it takes so much influence from European culture, but with a distinctly Japanese inspired bent. And so being able, in terms of both themes and characters and cultural influences, to integrate a lot of my upbringing and Japanese culture into the idea of high fantasy and swords and sorcery was really, it just feels so gratifying.
You know what also makes the world really great? Just a beautiful fucking music score. Come on, Taylor, you're so talented and good.
Hey!
Thank you.
Say more, Taylor.
Yeah.
This is your time to talk about
things.
stuff.
Say things.
Love music.
Sorry, that's all the time we have.
Music is magic. That's all I got. That's the long and short of it.
I'll shout out Taylor here with a level of specificity that specifically the different cultural touchstones. Because I would say, to bounce off of Erika's last point too, we kind of skip over high fantasy. I would say that high fantasy is probably one of the weakest flavors in the big melting pot of this show. I think that we have a lot of modernity in it and a lot of talking about logistical
trains. You don't understand how I feel about locomotives.
We all hooted about this.
We all hooted. But also not only trains, but like not only the modernity of the technology, but also the modernity of Miyazaki's love of aviation and Howl's Moving Castle, and like even some of the sort of like more modern fantasy where you have like interest in centers of power, like in a lot of like Game of Thrones, interest in centers of power, right? And then I think we skip a lot of high fantasy and go all the way back to myth. I think it's much more, if you were going to say, is this like if you made me put it on a shelf in a library and my only options were fantasy or fairy tale or like fantasy or folklore, I'd say that, well, it's neither, but I think the themes you're going to see, the feelings it's going to evoke, right, probably makes more sense over here. And I think that the music too, like the strains of like the initial parade of the Great Bear that you hear in the children's adventure, is I think one of the most joyous pieces of transportation. That is Bastian looking into the never-ending story and falling through and being in Fantasia. And you hear that music and you are fucking-sported. It is awesome. And that is, I think, a degree of like, Ursulon. It's very funny because it's not technically an isekai because there is no normal world. Like Umora is incredibly magical. The world of spirits is incredibly magical. But it does have that little bear cub boy that goes through the ivy door and suddenly it's Tir na Nog. He's trapped in the other world. Me and Erika talked in terms of like, there's incredible cultural influences in Taylor's music and score and sound design. Talking with Erika, we have a joke at one point. We were talking about all of the by way of Miyazaki and by way of a lot of Erika's influences, the Shrine Maiden, the Shinto elements that are there, and a lot of the Irish paganism that I was raised with, the Tuatha De Danann. We're like, something's going on islands. We don't know what it is with these island nations.
Like, it just leads to fairy time bullshit. Like, I don't know, like Urashima Taro, like, you don't ever, if you're ever like hanging out with mystical people, like, don't ever accept a little gift from them or...
Islands, deserts, the very deep forests.
Yes. Yeah, well, and actually, talking about deserts too, we have in the end of this last chapter, we have our first guitar. Taylor blew my mind with that. Is like, for being, as an American, what you think of as the classic, if not tied with the piano as like, this is the instrument. We hear our first guitar talking about Tefmet's homeland. And I think there's a lot of Americana baked in there too. Like the Stranger is, we talked about that in early kind of breaking out the world of Umora. It was like, yes, myth, fairy tale, Irish, Japanese, but also, man, that's the Stranger, the King of Night, is straight out of Americana and American folklore.
The Ace of Wands, the seedy kind of like polished but still rough. Yes.
Very ragtime.
Yes. Tom Waits and ragtime.
And then then also the Citadel, the marching band of it all.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah, totally.
The marching band, one of the first things we talked about. And then when we're in the Citadel, it's a marching band arranged like a John Adams score or a what's his name? Not Phil Spector. Yeah, Philip Glass.
Philip Glass.
There's no Phil Spector on the None. Wouldn't do it. We asked.
We asked.
We couldn't get him.
Couldn't figure out why. Wouldn't return my voicemail.
Voicemail.
And so
Hi, Phil. It's Taylor calling.
And it's wild. It's like
I'm gonna explain podcast to you first, and then ask you.
Yeah, it's like a wall of sound. That guy. So he only talks about one thing. So it's like we're in the Citadel and we have these like big John Williams sort of crescendo into like hyper modern, like super modern American arrangements and scores and tempos and all that stuff. And that's something you're not gonna find in The Hobbit 4.
Yeah.
Coming this fall.
It's true.
WitchCon, so good. Oh my god, it's so deeply upsetting in the best possible way. It was so difficult to listen to because I kept having to pause it because I was like, well, I have to steal this and put it in my world, and like my brain kept having to like process like, oh no, Hakeya has to exist in my world now. Oh, Grimoire has to exist. Like it's one of those like it was so good, and part of it was like the effects, like. Obviously, for those of you in the room, you had to listen to Brennan say, Grimoire says, over and over and over again, which, like, no shade to Brennan. That is how DMing works. But, like, Taylor editing all of that out and being like, no, Grimoire's voice is this, was just magic.
I've said this on our fireside chat, which is our Patreon fireside where we
got it in there even in the interview.
Yeah,
gang.
look, he's a machine of this. $5.
I'm telling you what, I'm going through a lot of fruit pouches over here. Okay,
it's mostly me. It's not even the Wizard Sonny. I come over and I'm like, God, I would love to not chew. What's up?
But within that fireside, I've said this before, but Taylor editing those out, it's so the beautiful. Muffled mask effect on Marara.
Yes.
And Marara and Indri don't have an identical voice, but they're certainly the closest between Grimoire, Hakeya, Indri, and Marara. So that filter on Marara's voice meant that Taylor, I think I literally was like startled listening to the podcast as I fully interrupted myself, and I was like, I don't remember doing that. It was awesome. It was so awesome.
Hey, speaking of startled by the podcast, post-credit scenes, gang, how we feeling? We still upset?
Betrayed.
I'm glad that I was warned about that by the internet.
Yo, big shout out to Sven who like posted that, I think, on the Patreon comments when I woke up. I was like,
to all what? I would have gotten there. I would have listened to it, but I would not. I would have just been so startled and like disrupted in my enjoyment of my life. So shout out to everybody for warning us.
Brennan, how long were we planning that?
We knew, I think we knew it. We didn't talk about that going at the end of chapter 2. No,
bastards.
It had to be after Ursulon. It had to be after Ursulon with the sword. I think it was immediately after the episode where Ursulon, spoilers, where Ursulon,
be caught up.
Yeah, Ursulon and the Man in Black have an interaction.
$5, get caught up.
Get caught up. After Ursulon and the Man in Black's interaction, it was like, oh, we know, because the language of the prophecy, that was the intention. Like, if you listen to the Man in Black, that I knew from the beginning. And there was a world where Ursulon said yes, but I was like,
well,
yeah.
Okay, can I ask you a question? Sorry, Jordan.
Hey,
all right. So there have been, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 2 major prophecies in the show.
Yes.
One from the Man in Black about who would be his champion, and the other from Uncle Sly.
Yes.
About the gang and what would happen if certain things did or didn't happen.
Yes.
That's kind of like saying, "Oh, I'm going to DM this bit, but I'm going to do it blindfold. Like I'm going to do it behind the back. I'm going to do it reverse." You know, I feel like that's backwards with heels on.
Okay,
so like,
Ginger,
does that make you terrified as a DM to make a prophecy and be like, "Oh God"?
Wait, we talked about this before, and Brennan was like, "No," because I called the shot that I'm gonna put.
That hasn't come out yet, Erika.
I gotta. Oh, has it not?
Does that come out tomorrow?
Did I forget this conversation?
I love it. I love it.
Okay.
Well, because
I talk a lot. I hear. Listen, you know how much of you I hear.
He's not wrong.
This isn't a past fireside where we're like
asking me to remember a single raindrop hitting the window. It's a lot of raindrops. Give me a break. I gotta go.
I gotta go.
Slow as the chair goes.
Tilt the camera up. Tilt the camera up.
I'm not wearing any pants.
Do space work.
To answer the question,
Taylor?
From Taylor.
Okay.
What was the question?
Jordan, Jordan.
Is prophecy hard?
Prophecy
I
hard.
do want to know the answer to this. It is,
Thank you.
Yeah. The answer is circumstantial based on the prophecy you create. If you make a prophecy that is impossible to fulfill, my very first campaign that I ran from the age of 11 to 17 started with this wild multi-page prophecy, and every PC was a part of the prophecy. And like 2 years in, another friend joined, and I had to find a way for him to also be chosen by a prophecy I had written 2 years. Now that was hard. So in a weird way, like my earliest lessons in DMing were like how to do this responsibly.
We don't run modules. We don't write prophecy. Those are the lessons.
I think the easier. I mean, if you want to get a real, this is real. Like pulling the sleeves up. Like how is the trick done? Prophesy in the direction of your PC's desire, and you won't go wrong. Right?
Yeah.
Like. Your PCs don't want to die. If you give them a prophecy about how not to do that, it's way more likely to happen than here's something that will happen no matter how hard you try to stop it, which every like anti-authoritarian, it's like you will, when you die, it will be because you are struck by lightning. Your PC is about to become subterranean. They are about to never go out under the sky again, versus something where it's like, hey, as you head in the direction that you're traveling in, or even like, prophecy was, I love prophecy. Prophecy was used in EXU Calamity as well, right? So like I've had it in a number of different worlds and stories. In Umora, the Man in Blacks was an easy one because the real ramifications were always going to be off screen, right? Like it's not up to Ursulon how that shakes out, right? Ursulon can choose to get on board or not. And the same with Sly's prophecy. Sly's prophecies were all about, here's how you avoid danger. I'm presuming you want to do that, right? And because it is in the direction of the PC's desire, it's not that hard of a shot to pull off. I hope that doesn't sound cocky, but it really is like you're lining it up. It's basically like, I'll bet you $100 that ball rolls downhill. Like it's like that's how it's gonna go, right?
It probably also helps when you have 3 of the most talented players in the world who are going to yes and your prophecy. Like,
yes.
There is no fear that they're going to be like, no, call to adventure, no, thank you.
Or the idea that they're going to be like, I would like to torpedo the mise en scène of our podcast. Like,
it does become a really fun thing as a player, though, to get that and go like, okay, what's the cheekiest thing I can do that will still fall into that? My tiny example is just having Suvi Suvi plays with the idea of prophecy just in her interaction with Uncle Sly when she's like, put these rubies away.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no one's going to take them. And then you have that little moment of like, well, I'm going to take a ruby because you can't tell me what to do. And then eventually gives it back because it's important as like the writer of the character to go like, he does know. And it's important to like play into that too. So you can have this little moment of like, I buck and I reject prophecy, but I got to the same conclusion my own way. And that's actually fine.
I'm going to give back the ruby, but not because it was prophesied.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, that's incredible.
My choice, not fate.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this has been absolutely amazing. We're over time, and I feel guilty, but not like that much guilty because you guys are all incredible. I love the podcast so much. Give them $5 and listen to the Children's Adventure and everything else. It's wild if you're listening still to this and you haven't stopped to go listen to a much better thing in Worlds Beyond Number.
We didn't talk at all about Arc 4. We didn't talk at all about Arc 4, and that's rude. Be better, Jordan.
I'm
talking Arc 4.
Is this
That's
my
all
fault?
the time we've got.
Yeah. Tell me something about Arc 4. Is it good?
Yeah.
How long until the gang gets back together? 6-7 episodes?
When you hear the music for the Fox's funeral, you're going to buy the soundtrack. What?
I was screaming.
Yeah.
I found sackcloth so I could rend it.
I didn't think the tuba could be so sensual, but that's where...
It's because it's a sousaphone, Brennan.
Yes,
that's the
exactly.
difference.
Light motifs.
Really getting a sort of smooth jazz out of the tuba that I really... It was beautiful.
If people want Chapter 4 information, they can go to Screen Rant and Caitlin Terrell. She's talking to you guys in like 3 hours. She's going to ask you serious questions. I'm going to ask you who you want to fuck from the campaign. That's what people pay me $5 to see on my Patreon.
Hell yeah.
You get the answers that people crave.
Absolutely
I think
incredible.
I would marry Grimoire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A perfect ending. The way I end interviews is I don't know how to. So I'm just going to hit stop recording.
Okay,
bye. Bye, Nemesis. I love you.
Bye, everybody.